Hi everyone, welcome back to our second podcast. Hope you've all had a good weekend and have been staying safe. Today on the panel we have Priyanka.
Hi.
We have Benjamin.
Hi.
And we have a special guest.
Hi, I'm a doctor. I work in mental health.
So, just to straight get into the topic, our question today is how systematic racism can impact mental health. And just before we get started, I need to put a disclaimer out there that this isn't singling out or generalising any organisations. It's just to touch on issues regarding the system itself. So the first question is, what is institutional and systematic racism?
Institutional racism is embedded as normal practice in societies and in organisations, and systemic racism is kind of like the system as a whole. So it will include, organisations like the police. There are different types of racism that people can experience in and out of services, in and out of workplaces, such as direct racism, indirect, which tends to be like microaggressions and harassments, and victimisation. So victimisation is if you as a staff member are going to make a complaint regarding racism, and you are then treated unfairly due to making that complaint. So that can, include stuff like xenophobia, colorism.
And which institutions, do you guys think are or can be involved in this racism?
I'd say main institutions that I'd say have quite a bit of systemic racism and institutional racism is obviously one of the obvious ones would be police, but then you'd have in a medical setting, as some people may know, you could go into a hospital being of a certain background, ethnicity, again, treated differently, made to wait longer, or when you're being given whatever treatment you could need, it's not being explained properly, you know what I mean, or it's not being explained in, I feel like some of the people that are going into hospitals or prisons or police stations or wherever it could be, if you are from a different country or whatnot, and not knowing the terminology and the lingo of how certain people speak, that itself can make someone feel like, they're not from here, so why should I have to explain it properly so they get it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think one of the big things that you have to bear in mind is if you're talking about institutions, if you're talking about systems, it's a reflection of the wider society that you're in. We have, for example, the police or the health system has been around for a very long time, and it's the cumulative or sort of like long-term effects of different ways of thinking. So, for example, we've got a mental health system. That mental health system, the basic bare bones of it is, going back 50, 60 years, and it was a different time back then. And the same with the police force. And when you think about, trying to just sort of thinking ahead of trying to effect change, you can't think, we're going to change this overnight, because a lot of it's built in, the foundations are there, and the foundations can reflect on society.
Because if the person's already a certain way already,
yeah,
and no one's ever picked them up on it, then why should they feel
exactly, yeah,
you know what I mean, any sort of way about being themselves in a sense.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things, you have to think the systems are big systems, and there's an old saying, elephants don't sprint. So, if you've got a big system, it's going to change slowly, and it's taken a while to get to this point. It's going to take a while to sort of affect change. But I guess that's kind of thinking further ahead down the line.
Yeah, I feel like media plays a massive part in moulding people's ways of thinking as well.
100%.
Like how the newspapers have portrayed refugees, immigrants, how they portray crimes committed by black people compared to crimes committed by white people, or crimes committed by Muslim people compared to Christians or people that don't have a religion. I feel like wordplay in news article, it has such a massive effect on the way people think.
I think a lot of people try and this is going from a few of the complaints about the George Floyd incident that happened, where he might not have had the most perfect history of growing up in his day-to-day life, but to then turn around and then say, well, he did this and this so after he died, it's like, so he deserved to die for those things that he did. You know what I mean?
Compared to how many white people that have done school shootings who are very peacefully arrested. And I just think it's not about saying, oh, black people have suffered, we should just get away with everything. I feel like that's a lot of the time that's what people think the logic is, and that's what people think the Black Lives movement is, or Black Lives Matter movement is about, when it's about saying, well, we need to be treated equally. So if you're going to peacefully arrest a white person for, you know, doing a school shooting, surely they should be using that same treatment.
I think once you point the finger at the so-called white man, it's almost like, what? You can't point a finger at me. You're not allowed. When people did it with the Winston Churchill and started saying all the bad stuff that he had done, they didn't want to hear it. He's not interested.
Completely.
You know what I mean? It's like, no, he's too important to us. Let's not change that. Let's not bring out what he's actually done or how he actually got to where he got to by doing the unspeakable things he did. Oh, let's forget all of that. Just don't talk bad on our saviour sort of thing. Anyway.
What do you guys think of, you know, the term "I don't see colour"? What do you think of that phrase and that term?
I think the biology is quite clear that you do see colour. I think you know it's we have colour vision, so yeah, you do see colour, and whether or not
This is coming from a doctor, guys.
yeah, and I think
We've got colour screen TV,
yeah,
guys.
yeah. So that's a simple question, but I mean, looking at some of the studies, I mean, I was reading them the other night. For example, you can take any person, even any ethnicity, and show them different pictures of different people of different ethnicities and different colours, and then you can measure brain activity. And it's quite interesting that in the West, and this doesn't hold across different societies, but in the West, if you show a picture of a black person, inevitably you're going to get action in the amygdala, which is a part of the brain, which with the fear and the fight-flight response. And that's actually across ethnicities. Even if you show a black person a picture of another black person, that's going to cause fear in that, cause activity in that region, which is associated with fear. So, some of this stuff is pretty hardwired. And, you can say one thing, but the way that you act is based on other processes. And the interesting thing about that, not to sort of get tied up in the science, but a lot of this activity is happening in regions that we don't have conscious control over that. We don't have conscious awareness, but that still affects the way that you are sort of acting towards other people. So I think to say I don't see colour is it's a noble standard that you can try and stick to, but I think the science is quite clear that you do see colour. And
I think it dismisses people's experiences. It's almost an excuse to not pay attention to racism in a way, like racism exists, but I don't see colour. So it's dismissing other people's experiences.
Yeah, like I don't see colour, but
you might as well get all lives matter.
Like you might not see colour, but but I do.
Yeah.
And I've had to go through the experiences of that.
Yeah. What the doctor was touching on in terms of like the fight or flight being activated when being shown pictures of black people, I think that really rings true with how black people are treated in their relationship with the police. For example, with stop and searches, there's been 21,950 stop and searches on young black men since the beginning of lockdown in England and Wales.
No way.
And 80% of them have resulted in no further action. And for every 1,000, there were 4 stop and searches for every 1,000 white people compared to 38 for every 1,000 black people. So I feel like that fight or flight does come in play
100%.
when it comes to crimes committed by black people compared to crimes committed by white people.
Just to add some more context to that, those statistics, you're not more likely to be committing a crime if you're of a black or ethnic minority. We know that criminal offending behaviour is pretty standard across the board. And in fact, I think looking at someone would have to quote me on the statistics, but I think you're more likely to be white if you're a murderer and certain other sort of high-level serious crimes, including rapes and assaults.
But if you just
sorry.
If you look at the country we're in anyway, as an ethnic minority, how are the minority of the whatever race could be committing more crime of the
majority?
Living here.
You might be overrepresented in certain
certain crimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Overrepresented, but they're the only ones they're choosing to try and talk about. There's massive crime organisations now that are doing big crimes across the whole country not being talked about or not.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think the police recently stopped this, but there was a software called the Origin software.
Yes.
Where they were trying to see if different ethnic groups specialised in particular types of crime. Although the police tried to state that this wasn't used for the purpose suggested, however, considering the relationship that the police already have with black people, it's going to be very hard for people not to be suspicious. Yeah, to be suspicious of that.
Racial profiling.
Yeah, it's racial profiling,
He's got to be potential
Yeah.
terrorist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or what if they don't like the look of that Asian person at that time, or black person at that time? You know what I mean?
And like Benjamin was saying, we were talking about this the other day. If you're going to an area that's already got high crime rates and is predominantly black or or Asian, you're going to go there with a certain mindset, and that will also kind of activate your fight or flight, because you know it's predominantly black. That's not to say that it's predominantly black people that are committing these crimes, because people come in from other cities, but you're gonna have that kind of mindset of, oh, there's a black person, we need to be conscious of that, we need to be careful of, let's follow him, let's stop and search him.
Yeah, and I think what we know from the way that the brain works is that for such a complicated organ, it does like to be lazy, it does like to make shortcuts, you know, it does like to sort of play by rules of thumbs. I mean, the technical terms are heuristics, but we know that the way that you think, often you make snap judgments and you go for sort of the easiest option. And if your brain has been moulded, like we were saying before, by media and other organisations to view certain people in certain ways, then obviously you're not going to sit there and put the effort in and think, okay, these two people, you know, for example, as a police officer, these two people are driving a car, one's black and one's, you know, from another ethnic minority. Oh, why are they driving at this time? You're not going to think of these, you know, these complicated sort of multi-step processes. You're just going to think crime and then
and it's even been. There's even evidence to show that stop and searches have little to no effect on crime rates.
Yeah,
that's the big thing.
Yeah,
that's the big thing in the whole stop and search. It's such little, like, it has such little effect.
Yeah.
But how do you think something like that can be improved or bettered?
Well, I feel like rather than treating the symptoms, so reinforcing police numbers in order to combat crime, we need to focus on our energies on prevention and the underlying issues, which are poverty, housing, education, employment, healthcare services, and this includes mental health, and it can also, all of that can impact mental health.
Yeah, but all of that costs money, and we all know that it's something that they feel is something to put their time into to try and sort out. Just
to sort of, you know, the counter option. I don't think that would cost as much money as what they're spending now on the police.
Yeah, it wouldn't. But at the same time, if it doesn't cost as much, why not just do it?
Yeah. I think it's the same thing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they don't care. You know what I mean? If you cared
And
to the point where you want to change it and stop it from happening, then do that. Or do you want to keep
They want
creating
change.
jobs?
That's the
Yeah.
thing.
You know what I mean?
Really
Well,
want change.
it's interesting because despite estimates suggesting that around 50% of UK police incidents involve people with mental health concerns, they actually offer they receive very little mental health training. And there was a journal where it was quoted by a police officer that I'm a police officer, not a social worker or a mental health nurse. And I think that type of mindset, it's kind of missing the point. Like, you don't have to be a mental health nurse, but understanding mental health, it's going to help you manage and communicate with the public a lot better.
It's like once they put the uniform on, it's almost a mentality of, I only fight crime.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't sort stuff out. I don't help people.
Yeah.
I just stop crime.
And the sad
as long
thing
as I'm
is,
stopping crime.
yeah, and the sad thing is, there's police officers out there that actually want to do what the police are supposed to do, which are protect. But it's going to be very hard for them to gain trust from the public,
especially with everything that's going on.
Yeah,
now.
I just think it's hard for them.
If you're gonna put the uniform on, that regardless if it's gonna be very hard, it's your job to go out there, put yourself in the front line, and get to know the community.
You signed up for it.
Yeah, you signed up for it.
It's part of your job.
You can't sign up to it and be like, I've had police officers say to me, I'm only here for my paycheck. I'm going home to my wife and kids. I don't really care. You know what I mean? It's like, why are you here then? If you're on the side of your van it says serve and protect, and you're out here only serving yourself, protecting the people you're with that you got out of the van with, and you're against everyone else, how is that gonna help? It's only gonna make the situation worse. And I think a lot of police go into, again touching on going to certain areas, they go into the areas thinking that, look guys, it's only us when we go out there. We have to make sure we're all safe. Yeah, you do have to make sure you're safe, but when you get out the car, is it a matter of making sure we're all safe? You see other stuff happening that isn't right or shouldn't be happening. You see another police officer doing a bit too much, saying a bit too much. What, you don't say nothing because he's on your team. You know what I mean?
I've seen that happen.
There's no difference with a mentality like that. There's no difference with the police compared to a gang. You know what I mean? Because a gang wants to stop them in a car, 4 doors on it, guys hopping out, grabbing someone up, and then saying, "Oh, we're going to detain you for such and such." The only difference is the government pays one, and the other is classed as a criminal.
That's
you know
why
what I
you
mean?
have people that say the police are the biggest gang in the world, and that's because they're not trusted anymore. It's going to take a lot
It's almost
to
as if
gain
they're
the
not bothered.
people's trust back. Yeah, they that's true.
Kind of not bothered that they don't get the trust. It's like, I've got my job.
It's the power.
Yeah, it's not. It's they're almost a level of soldier in a sense. As long as they can carry out an order.
Yeah. A mercenary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as they can carry out an order, who actually cares? Have they met their quota? Yes. We don't know what their quota. We don't know what a quota even looks like. But they're not. All of them ain't coming out to try and protect the community. They're doing more so just protecting themselves.
But that's where like the whole thing about understanding the people that you are serving and protecting, like, and mental health is a big part of that.
Yeah, of course.
It's a huge part of that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and we know, just from looking at sort of different studies and looking at the evidence. I mean, the question is that, are you more likely to be a victim or are you more likely to be a perpetrator of crime if you have mental health issues? And I think the evidence is quite clear that you're more likely to be a victim of crime. So for Priyanka to mention that 50% of all police involvement involves some of the mental health issues, it makes you think, really, doesn't it? Are these people being treated like victims, or are they being treated like perpetrators?
Yeah.
And when you add in sort of the racial lens as well, I think it gets really complicated, and sort of the solution is probably going to be, coming back to what Priyanka mentioned, looking at what can you do to sort of a few steps before the police are sort of hopping out of the van and trying to deal with situations. How can you put in place a structure that supports and sort of gives people equal opportunities?
Yeah.
And I think another thing that people tend to turn a blind eye to is police brutality in the UK, and I think people
They
compare
kind of
it,
associate it with America.
Yeah, people compare it to places like Brazil and America, where there's gun laws, and we don't use guns here. So I feel like because we don't, people think it doesn't happen here. But 1,750 people have died in police custody or with police contact since 1990 in England and Wales, which is a lot. Yeah. It's a lot of people. Nobody should be dying in police custody.
Nobody.
Yeah, how
it should be zero. It should literally be zero.
From protect and serve to murderers, it's like, where is that in your job role? But again, if you're only getting a smack on the wrist for doing something like that, should the officer really care? You know what I mean? Should he really be bothered about his actions that he's just done? If he just said to another 4 officers, "Oh, let's go down to this area. I know this guy around there who's been doing this, and this," because they know a little bit of dirt, is it on them to say, "All right, let's rough him up a bit"? You know what I mean? Why did they get away with such?
Like you said, it's because they get away with it, so they've got nobody to answer to, kind of thing. Whereas like criminals or just the people in general, like, people will not do crime because they know the police are there, or we have to answer to somebody if we do something bad. Whereas
who did the
police answer to?
People make complaints and you never hear anything from it. You know what I mean? As a member of the community, you see something bad happen, you see someone get tasered when they shouldn't have been, see someone trying to help their parent or their mum, their whoever it is, police officer not trying to listen, not trying to hear what he's got to say, jumping straight to a conclusion. Now he's got his taser out, he's the dangerous threat in that situation, but he's a police officer, so he's allowed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like going back to ways that we can kind of prevent these situations, there are communities and charities and organisations within Manchester that, try and work with the police to kind of form a better relationship with the young people in the communities and how to respond to crime a bit better.
I wouldn't just say it's the young people, because young people are following the track of what older people have set. So it's a more of, if the police are going to try and tackle the streets, you can't be tackling the streets with a mentality of, this guy is a gang member, treat him like this. You know what I mean? treat them as a normal human being. If you was in certain areas, because there's certain areas where they say, wow, I've never seen or not once seen a police officer attack anyone. The police around here are great. Well, could we get some of those great police officers in
Could we
some
have
of
some of
these
those?
ethnic
Could we have some
minority
of those,
areas?
please?
Because the ones we got down here is not, they're not trying. I feel as though they're not trying to particularly help. They're more so, how could I see it? More of like a total recall sort of police officer. Go in, clean up, get out. You know what I mean? There's no actual go in, find out what happened, talk to them, get to know the community, get the trust of the community. Nah, none of that. They're scared just as much as everyone else is scared. If everyone's scared, where's the solution gonna come from?
Yeah. Moving on from like the police, what about the criminal justice system on a whole? What
Well,
about that?
The criminal justice system as a whole is definitely unfair. Like, black people are 9 times more likely to be locked up in England and Wales than their white counterpart. And according to the Ministry of Justice analysis, it was 25% in 2009 for black people, and it rose to 41% in 2016.
In 7 years.
In 7 years.
That's a big percentage.
And even like trust within like black and Asian and other ethnic minorities, they have a lack of trust in their solicitors, the judges, everyone within that's involved in their care at that point. They've got zero trust in them. They have a them and us type of mindset.
Yeah.
And it's, you can't really blame them for having that mindset, considering the inequalities that we face as minorities.
Even the inequalities that we give to ourselves, you know what I mean? As in, when you're hating on yourself, not hating on yourself, but again, I'm just gonna go off black people. When you see other black people doing all kinds of madness, doing road, doing gang stuff, and then you're then meant to turn around and trust that as another person like that, you are gonna be like, I don't really want to work with. So realistically, is the problem is with police, and there also is a problem within the ethnic minorities as well.
But can I make a point on that? The reason I find an issue in that is, you say for example, in saying that you see a small minority of black people committing these crimes and you have that mistrust, how come that same mindset or logic isn't used with white people? So you see a group of young white people committing a crime, police don't then think, oh God, I don't trust white people.
Yeah.
But they do it with black people and Asian people. Is it because we're a minority?
Yeah.
I think it's down
Or-
to what he said,
Yeah.
what Dot said before, with the brain thing.
Yeah.
It's like, again, they must be seeing a group of black people and
Being afraid.
being afraid, seeing us as
Yeah.
aggressive. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't know what we're like until you.
I suppose it's to do with, because they're different. They're different. If someone's different to you, you're going to have that lack of understanding in a way, lack of cultural awareness. So you're automatically going to, your survival instincts are going to come on straight away.
Sort of looking at a sort of in a social and cultural sense. I think, you know, when we talk about black and minority ethnic, not all ethnic minorities are acting the same way, behaving the same way, and even within, you know, if you look at the black community, if you take somebody who's of Caribbean descent versus somebody who's from African descent, somebody who's a first generation immigrant versus somebody who his family's been here for many, many decades and many generations, you're talking about sort of apples and oranges, really, aren't you? You know, even thinking about somebody who might be, for example, a first generation person, immigrant, Nigerian Muslim versus somebody who might have been here for several generations and might have come from the transatlantic slave trade. Those are two very, very different segments of, you know, of the same sort of population. But I guess the question is, are they treated the same just because of the colour of their skin and the way that they look? Whereas, you know, we know from science that there's more variation within a group than compared to other groups. So for example, someone from East Africa, someone from West Africa, there's going to be more differences in them genetically than somebody from Europe and somebody from Africa.
Yeah.
So,
But even still, having that information, or having the police had that information, considering what they are like today, I don't think that'd make anything.
no, I think that was my point really. We're not discriminating on that level. We're sort of stepping back and making it much more much more snap judgments, and I think that goes back to what I was saying about the brain being quite lazy. You're not going to sit there and make the
hard decisions.
Yeah, the hard decisions based on that evidence.
Yeah.
I think also certain things do play into it. So when we're talking about, for example, somebody who is black and somebody who is white, we know just sort of statistically, The person who's black is more likely to be from a deprived area, more likely to be from a single parent household. The median income or the sort of average money that they're going to earn is going to be less. The rate of schooling is going to be less, so they're going to have completed less years of formal schooling, and also their employability in the fact that how many jobs have they had and is also going to be different. So in that respect, the cards are stacked against that community in so many different levels.
It's from the beginning, like BAME groups are higher risk of being unemployed. Pakistani people have a 9.2% employment rate. Black Africans 8.7%, mixed heritage 8.2%, and white is 5.1%.
Unemployment, you mean?
Unemployment rate.
Yeah. So and I guess in that respect, when this person turns up, just from my perspective, and I don't work in the police, when this person turns up on the ward, already there's been so many factors that have led to them coming there that it can change the presentation. So it makes it difficult for me to sort of think, is this person being treated differently because they're black, or is this person being treated differently because they're from a lower income group with less schooling, with maybe more exposure to illicit substances?
I suppose once you start stacking the cards against someone and you're already thinking negatively of that person.
Why
would you actually want to help them?
From that perspective, I know in my experience, I've seen different types of people from black minority ethnic groups. I've seen those people where there's been a lot of social factors that I think most of this presentation is due to the way the person was brought up, the way this person's grown up, being treated, sort of growing up, and sort of their socioeconomic status. And then sometimes I think I can't explain why this person is being treated this way. Why is he on so much medication? I'm just thinking of a few examples in my head. I can't explain why if this person wasn't black or wasn't Asian, I don't think they would be treated this way. Yeah. So sometimes, I guess I'm not trying to explain away everything by saying, these groups aren't the same, but there is sometimes more to it. And I guess even thinking from a doctor's perspective, I know that if you're an Asian doctor or a black doctor, you're more likely to be taken to court, and you're more likely to, if you are taken to court or sort of taken to tribunal with the General Medical Council, you're more likely to get a severe punishment. So I think that when we talk about systemic racism, it works both ways, and I think same what we see in the police services. The black and minority ethnic officers, there's a ceiling for them, and it's difficult for them to get to certain levels.
And then it's hard for them as well because they're kind of seen as outside sellout. So if you see a black or an Asian officer, the first thing you think is you're a sellout or you're an outside. You're not one of us. You're not one of them.
I'll be honest. I've played victim to that. I'll see a black police officer just walking around DMs and it's like, is he actually doing much to do anything, or is he here because he's black, put him in that area, or he's Asian, also put him in that area, they'll like him? And it's like, I understand where that's coming from, but is that one police officer there or those two police officers, do they have a lot of say? You know what I mean? From what they see out on the roads, and something starts to go down, are they going to call those two same police officers that have been in that area for years to come and help with a complex situation? Or are they going to go get like Trident or whichever big police force to come down dressed in black, masked up, and be like, yeah, they're going to deal with it? You know what I mean? It's like, don't be putting certain people in certain areas and not having them work on cases if they know the area well. You know what I mean? Like, it's a face that people have seen. Won't people respond better to a face that they know? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very true.
There's a quote from the Stephen Lawrence inquiry about institutional racism and how it should be understood to refer to the way the institution or organisation may systematically or repeatedly treat people differently because of their race. So in effect, we're not talking about the individuals within the service who may be unconscious to that nature of what they're doing, but it's more like the overall effect of what they do.
Yeah. I know. Sorry, go on.
I think for systematic racism or institutional racism, when it's happening, it needs to be brought up more, taken more seriously. As in, once it happens, instead of people to think, right, that's not good, but they get on with the rest of their day like, it's not me. You know what I mean? It's like, if people put it up more, if action starts to get taken on at a low level from when it's been happening on the ground level, it will start to have a knock-on effect going back up. But hopefully it should have a knock-on effect anyway.
Yeah, it's like,
I don't work in those situations.
Yeah, you're right, because it starts from school a lot of the time as well, and considering, for example, black people are being criminalised from being in school just for their hair. They're not allowed to have it in an afro. They're not allowed to have it in braids. They're not allowed to have it in locks. They're being penalised and criminalised.
Already.
Yeah, and
I think
school
it depends on the
essentially,
area.
essentially, school is preparing you for the outside world.
Yeah.
So essentially,
It's the first system, isn't it?
Yeah, essentially what the schools are telling black people is you are not professional, you will not be able to get a job, you will not be able to get far in life.
Because you look like this.
Because you look like
this.
this.
See,
this.
again, I have to say my experience coming through my school,
Yeah.
having majority of the people black, Somali or Asian, that was pretty much most of the school. So again, the teachers that were there, if not all of them, most of them were white, but there wasn't teachers saying you can't have your hair like this, you shouldn't do this with your hair, it shouldn't be that long. I think the most we got was don't dye your hair any different colours, keep it black, you know what I mean, or keep it its natural colour for what it was. So again, for me growing up in my school, I wouldn't say I had issues with the teachers being racist like that. I'm down. So.
Yeah, I feel like it appears to be kind of like a newer thing. I don't know if
I don't know about newer, but what if it's an area thing?
Yeah, it could be based on
could be.
what's going on.
You know what I mean? In that area, having short hair, whatnot, is probably seen as acceptable or more presentable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But like even me, you know, having experience in the education system and working with children, like I have seen it children who are from different minorities and, you know, English isn't their first language, they are a little bit dismissed.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like maybe they just won't
Too much
understand. It's too much work to, you know, to help them understand. So they're just dismissed a little bit. You know?
And also like the curriculum, when you're taught history, you're not taught it properly, I'll say.
You're taught the good bits of history.
And I feel like there's organisations now that are out there, like the Black Curriculum, who are trying to get Black British history a mandatory part of history lessons and part of the curriculum, which I think is so important, because not just for black people, even for Asian people, for what Pakistani and Indian people have done for this country when they migrated here, it's not really taught to us, and it's almost like you don't really know who you are unless you're lucky to come from a family that teaches you about who you are, your roots, your culture. You won't know any different.
Even that's why it's so important for families and parents to teach the children. Because I did a lot of like, I self-taught myself a lot, so my history teachers hated me, because when we did like studying, because I had the questions and I had, you know, but
I think a lot of history when it's taught, possibly anyway, is not taught in certain ways because it might take away from that Britain is great sort of thing.
Yeah.
Imagine if you went into a classroom and...
That's why they hated me. I have too many questions on them.
Once you start making Britain just look like Britain instead of Great Britain, it's like, hang on a minute, we need to put the great back in.
Well, that's why we're told to forget about slavery, told to forget about what the bad stuff in the past that have happened to us, but we still do 1 minute silence for 9/11.
Almost every step of the way, black people are reminded of how much crime they do, how much damage they do to this, that. Why are we always reminded about that? But then once it's time
we're
to
always
talk
reminded
about,
how they came to better us.
We got civilised. Civilised all the stupid brown folk that have already been civilised for many centuries.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things, isn't it? History is written by the victors.
Exactly.
If you win, you get to talk about it. If you don't, so there's no safety.
I know. And you know, it's really interesting what we're talking about here, because I think one of the recurring themes is that we're thinking, oh, something must be done. Then I guess who's doing that something? Because the power structure at the moment is, obviously, we know it's inherently male, inherently Caucasian. And you know, usually, you know, I don't want to say older people. But people with more conservative. More conservative inclination. So, do we want those people to be making the decisions to make things better, in quotes?
Exactly.
Because you know, a misguided attempt to help someone which actually hurts them is still hurting them, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you know, to know and not to do is the same as not to know. So in that respect, you know, what are we doing for ourselves? And when I say we, I mean you know, black and minority ethnic people. And I think things like this, for example, this podcast. You know, you were talking about some of the groups that like the Black Curriculum. There's a lot to be done from our end. We need to push the boat, and we can't sit back and wait for them, inverted commas, to help us. we need to do things for ourselves.
We
and
need
be
to help
self-sufficient.
ourselves.
Yeah,
Exactly. And not just ourselves in a sense of black people help black people.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
should, but if it works more of all of the
together.
ethnic minorities working together just because
Yeah.
they want to work
Yeah.
together.
Because how much of a minority is it if all minorities
it'll be a
work
less
together?
of a minority.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
We'll all be able to move forward a lot easier
Yeah.
in my life if we did like that.
I think considering the mindset a lot of British people do have, you know, with dismissing British history for what it really is. I mean, for example, Diversity did a Black Lives Matter dance tribute, and
Oh,
it
yeah,
got
yeah.
flooded with complaints.
Hoo-ha, yeah.
Ashley Banjo, which is that his last name, is the lead dancer of Diversity, was flooded with racial abuse.
Yeah.
Flooded with it, and considering people have more of a problem. People have a problem with us fighting for our rights than they do actual racism, and I think
Yeah.
that mindset is so dangerous that it really does fall upon us ourselves
Yeah.
to make that change, to get up, make that difference, and I think our actions will kind of prove
Yeah.
truth in what we're saying.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, I don't know about you guys, when I was growing up, I was always told by my mum, you have to do twice as much for the same result
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
everyone else. And I think that's still
That's
the
still
same.
the same thing.
Yeah, it's still, and with what we're talking about, that's still the same. We still need, you know, Black Lives Matter is a very important social movement. What Diversity did was a very important thing, and I don't think they can stop just because of the backlash. I think if anything, they need to double it up.
Yeah, double it up.
Double it up, yeah.
And I personally think that the Black Lives Matter movement has really helped the Asian community as well, because I feel like there is a colorism issue especially within India,
Yeah.
really badly,
Massively.
and I think it's really helped with how the younger generation feel about themselves, to feel more confident in their skin, to feel more confident about their foreign sounding names. The Black Lives Matter movement hasn't only just helped black people, it's helped South Asian people
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
It really has, because I see more Sri Lankan, Tamil, Bangladeshi, South Indians being more proud of their dark skin, being more proud of their their names. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's helped communities as a whole, I reckon, and then from my personal.
Yeah, and I just think we just gotta keep going.
Yeah.
Just gotta keep going.
And there are so many white people out there that are so willing to fight with us.
Yeah.
And I think that's changed, because
That is
years
changed,
ago you wouldn't
yeah.
have got that. When
No.
Eric Garner died in police custody, he was from one of the African Americans that died, there wasn't this much support from
No.
the white community. And I don't know whether COVID and lockdown had an impact on that, but
I'd say
George
definitely.
Floyd's George Floyd's death, it's
Yeah.
had
'Cause you
a
Floyd's got him.
lot of support from the white community.
I said that COVID coming into play had a lot to do with white people getting involved. Well, not just white people. I say there's some black people out there that will be hearing all this stuff go on and not care because it's not got nothing to do with them. I understand it
Yeah,
hasn't
yeah.
got nothing to do
And
with
everyone's just getting on with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
you've
got
And
bills
their
to pay.
life.
Yeah, from when you can put it down to I've got more important things to do than worry
Yeah.
about what's happening over the water. You know what I mean? Then
Yeah.
you most likely would. But
Yeah.
the fact that COVID-19 came in and everyone was doing nothing and you could just see it for what it actually was and everyone's seen it. It's like, hang on,
Everyone's seen
this
it.
is what's actually happening. Yes, it's been happening for years and years. People have been trying to make it change. It almost seems like it's going to be impossible to change. You know what I mean? Even after George Floyd has died, they've still gone and killed more people after that.
Oh yeah, but it's not going to happen overnight. It will take years for this to actually fall in place. As long as we carry on and we don't just stop and then there's another death and then there's another protest and then it dies down.
No, make
another
noise
death.
every single
No,
time.
Yeah.
we need to make
It's
noise.
it's
that's what it
it's
is.
about carrying on and bringing it back to mental health. I think that the founder of Black Thrive, which is an organisation that supports individuals and aims to hold services accountable, it helped in the Mental Health Act review to tackle the overrepresentation of black people in this system. So she's called Dr. Jackie Dyer, she highlighted that black people are more likely to come through to mental health services via criminal justice systems and via the police. And
Yeah.
the way that she's identified that the way that we can help these individuals are the following stages. So prevention, patient access, patient experience, patient outcomes. And I think that's where On Our Mind has tried to contribute these sort of policies. So if you've got a patient who is black or who is Asian who is coming in, if we can address racism and put that into their treatment and their care plans, I feel that can have an effect, because I've mentioned this in the last podcast, but patients do tend to bring up racism, and it's often dismissed as paranoia because they're
Yeah.
unwell, or they're playing the race card
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get away with their behaviour. And I think the fact that we're not actually addressing something that is being brought up, something wouldn't get brought up if, 9 out of 10 times, to just for the sake of it. If it's
Yeah.
not important,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
bringing it up for a reason.
And I think this going on what you were saying, the statistics are quite clear, and it's on the Royal College of Psychiatry website, that there's you're more likely to be admitted and escalated to a more secure unit if you're a black and minority ethnic group. You're more likely to be injected against your will if you're a black and minority ethnic group. You're more likely to be restrained. You're more likely to be placed in sort of solitary confinement or seclusion, which is the
Hearing all
medical
that,
term.
would you do you want to even go into mental health? You know what I mean? If
That's
you're,
what I mean.
Yeah.
if
That's
you
what I
know
mean,
you
but
could have
that's
an
why a
issue,
lot of people don't go in. From the Asian communities,
Yeah.
that's why a lot of people don't go in as well.
There's a mistrust in
There's a
authorities.
mistrust completely. Every appointment, I feel like, speaking personally, I feel like I need to go in too.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what's being said to, mum or dad or grandma, whoever. I feel like I have to go in.
Yeah, and especially in like CAMS, like young people's services, the system is geared towards white young girls.
Yes.
The criteria being self-harm.
100%.
No wonder there's an overrepresentation in adult services, because in early life, mental health is seen as behavioural or
Yeah.
antisocial.
Yeah.
You're not intervening
Yeah.
early enough, and then when you are intervening, you're escalating them to sort of quite severe and punitive measures very quickly, and then that's going to build a mistrust in the system, and then you're less likely to engage, and then the cycle repeats
It's
itself.
just
Yeah.
snowball.
Yeah, it's a cycle, and I feel like
Cycle, yeah.
we can end that cycle of paranoia and anxiety around racism by addressing it whilst they're on the ward.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just mean addressing it when you're having a one-to-one with them, putting that into their treatment, into their care plan, having regular one-to-ones, ensuring that staff have that support in how to manage and tackle racism. It all helps, and it can build trust again, because that's essentially what we need to be doing. We need to be building up the trust between BAME communities and mental health services, because there is a lack of it.
100%.
Yeah.
No, that, and also building the trust within the for people that are going into working in mental health settings or police settings. Yeah, it is going to take a long time, but those people that are going in there, are they being given the same amount of room to be able to move up, progress, to be able to be in positions to make those changes?
To make those changes, that's what it is.
Absolutely.
Because it's very hard for people of colour to kind of, or ethnic. Yeah,
Although there
to
is
get
a
into
few
those-
up there, but even still, there's a limited amount that they can do, and because there's not a lot of ethnic minorities in high places within the police or mental health situations, they can't do much from the start. So in a sense, we do need more people, more ethnic minority people going into these services,
Yeah, definitely.
because it does make a change. Because when you see all the white people going into it and all the white people moving up, it's just going to be the same sort of thinking, getting them higher up. Because why is the person that's in that position before them, or the person who put that position in that the person who put a certain person in a certain position is still thinking in a very old-fashioned way, and then you come in with your same old-fashioned thinking as well,
Yeah.
he's going to be able to relate to that a lot more. Whereas if a group of people that were coming in were really diverse, even the white people that are in there, they need to be a bit more diverse in how they think. Because why can't a white person in a high position turn around and be like, yeah, you know what, it's disgusting what we're doing, let's stop it. But you don't hear any of that. You know what I mean?
No.
I've heard as well that in the NHS it's very hard for Black and Asian people to get past band 5 and above. Like there's very
What's band 5?
Band 5.
It's to do with seniority. So
Right.
that's ward manager, is it? And above?
Yeah.
I think so. I think one of the things that I was meant to say before, and I kind of we touched upon it. I think coming from just a strict mental health perspective, the problem is bigger than just the mental health system. And I think it's one of those things where it's a chicken and egg scenario. These people, and when I say these people, I mean people from black minority ethnic groups. They are more ill than on average than their white counterparts, and I don't think that's just down to genetics.
No,
Otherwise,
no.
everybody in Bangladesh and everybody in Africa would be in secure
Yeah.
units being injected against their will. So it's not to do with the genetics, it's not to do with who they are, it's to do with what is happening to them. And I think that is bigger than the mental health system. I think you've got a lot of social and economic factors that are impacting upon them and making them more unwell. And I think, again, you know, for us to say, oh, we need to do more in the mental health system, yes, of course we do need to do more, but it's more from stepping back and looking at the whole picture. The effect that these people are more ill is due to more than one thing. It's not just due to the fact that they're being treated, you know, we're being racist and directly discriminating. I think, like we were talking about, coming back to what we said at the beginning, the cards are stacked against you in so many angles, from so many layers, for such a long time, that I think the system can do small amounts from the mental health perspective, but it's bigger than that. It's political, it's social, and it's cultural.
Yeah, and I think with our training, we get people to understand that.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said in the other podcast, it's not about changing the way someone thinks. It's about giving people something to think about and understand. Yeah, and to understand where people are coming from. You might be privileged, and I've heard this before. I'm white, but I'm not privileged because I came from a working class background. I get that. You do, of course, we have white people that come from working class backgrounds, but they are still more privileged than, say, a black person or an Asian person
in the
from
same
working
background.
Yeah, from a working class background, and it's to understand where minorities have come from in terms of socio-economic and point of view, like the doctor was saying, the cards are stacked against us from early.
Yeah, and that's a really good note to end this podcast.
I hope you've all enjoyed yourselves. Stay tuned for the next one.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah,
a
thank
pleasure
you to our
having the
guests.
doctor. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section or send someone a message on Instagram or something. And
Yeah, and if you'd like to be involved in our next podcast, you can email us on onourmind24@outlook.com, or you can Instagram us on ourmindhq. All our contact information is on there. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.